something like that. Although I say Destiny 3 has to be an entirely different game, at the end of the day, it still needs to feel like Destiny. Adding a new class in the game would basically just make it to where one class can do an ability that another class can't, and that is now separated into 4 groups instead of 3. But the alternative is take that ability and add it to one of the existing classes, add way more depth to what that class can do. This is the way that Destiny has kind of always worked, and in subclasses, allowing certain keywords, buffs, and debuffs to be spread across all 3 characters, just being applied in different ways. On top of leaning into the more MMO-like element of the game, we already have the trifecta of damage, support, and tank. While those boundaries are extremely loose and any class can fill any one of those roles, and I think it's very important to keep those looser boundaries there, I think it's also important to allow people to build into the class identity more of all of these classes.
I love that. Okay, let's talk about this, guys, because Bungie loves to blend the lines. Sometimes they do it. I feel like just be assholes. Hunters having more melee gamers than Titans. Do you think that should be possible? Do you think at the end of the day, Titans should always output more melee?
This evolution's nature runs its course.
The damage than a hunter. Like warlocks for me equals support. Titans to me equals the tanky brawler. Hunters can be their DPS. You know what I mean? There's been a constant blending of this. I do like hybrids. Like I like the ability to not just be locked into a certain identity. But I think that in terms of like committing to one identity, that specific class should be able to have, the ability to go to the level.
And there needs to be some sort of balancing and making a choice there. You make a choice to be a warlock or a titan or a hunter for a reason. You should be able to play into that reason as much as you want to, which is why when you pick one of the 3 classes, we will focus more on support for warlock, tanking for titan, and DPS for hunter. Not to say that any of these other classes couldn't also do that, just a lot of the added features will allow for those classes to build even further into those identity roles. When you pick a class in D3, it will be very similar to picking a class right now. However, the idea of having intrinsic boosts to certain stats and certain abilities has been mentioned. What those boosts are right now in terms of intrinsic stats and other things isn't super concrete, but I know that I would like there to be some incentive to pick one thing over another that inherently helps you in the gameplay loop that you desire and for the reason that you picked that class. Now, the next thing on the document I'm hoping lightens that blow a little bit of no added class or no more classes. There are no more subclasses. When you open up your build crafting menu in Destiny 3, you will just choose your base abilities. You can mix and match all you want. The reason why Prismatic in Destiny 2 was balanced to have certain things from each of the subclasses was because there still had to be an incentive to go back and play one subclass instead of using the combination of Prismatic. On top of that, it had to be baked into an entire sandbox that had already existed for multiple years.
Guys, it's very important to have this conversation. Now, right, the D3 is never going to be possible. But it's very important to have this conversation if there is a possibility of D3. Because if we don't have this conversation, Bungie's going to look at static subclasses from D2 vanilla and go, you should go back to that. And if you think there's no way Bungie would ever go back to that, just remember, the Portal was originally conceived in 2013, and they knew even then that ruined the immersion of the game. Yet here in 2025, 2026, we are living with the Portal.
But because we're making this from the ground up, we don't have to worry about that. The system is pick your name, melee, class ability, super, and go. And I know this doesn't sound like too much of a change yet, but we're going to get to aspects next. So yeah, all we've said so far is that the classes are the same and everything is now on Prismatic. But just hear me out. Hear me out. When you open up your build crafting menu, it's not just going to be pick those base abilities and go. Each of these base abilities is going to have a tree of skills that you can slot into each of them. And this is the main method of build crafting. This is the new version of aspects. And aspects in D3 are not tied to the 2 you get in D2. While how many you can have will be eventually a certain allotted amount, that is to be determined. And I already hear the side of the argument that's saying, people want
Right.